Welcome to the Eldorado Gaming Deck Series. Eldorado Gaming is your site for premier accessories like metal dice and playmats. Eldorado Gaming sponsors the My Mythical Meta podcast, and the Deck Series features Magic the Gathering decks played by the My Mythical Meta crew. Subscribe to the channel and comment with your own suggestions or questions for the players. Welcome back to the Eldorado Gaming Deck Series. I'm joined today by my brother, Benjamin. How's it going?
Great, how are you?
I am great. I love my new house. One final addition happening tomorrow. I've got an electrician coming in to install more outlets.
All right, every house needs more outlets.
That's right, we are going to be fully connected.
Yeah, what deck are we teching today?
We are teching today my Dragon's Approach Commander deck.
All right, I'm very excited.
Dragon's Approach is one of the, I think, 6 special cards in Magic the Gathering that says a deck can have any number of this card. In constructed formats, a deck can only have up to 4 of any card that's not a basic land. In Commander, the decks are singleton. You can only have 1 of each card. Mm-hmm. But if a card's rules text says that a deck can have any number, then you can have any number.
Yeah, and there's something weird about seeing a Commander deck have multiple of the same card. And there's always something crazy. There's lots of cards that you never see in Commander because they talk about cards with the same name. There's when you're building your deck around a card, oftentimes you have to fill your deck with tutors or card draw to hope that you can find that card. But with a card like Dragon's Approach, you will always see it.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to see it all the time. Here's Dragon's Approach. It is a sorcery. It costs 2 and a red. Dragon's Approach deals 3 damage to each opponent. You can exile Dragon's Approach and 4 cards named Dragon's Approach from your graveyard. If you do, search your library for a dragon creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And then it has that bonus text that a deck can have any number of cards named Dragon Approach. I have 31 in this deck. I would really love to run 33, but as I was building this deck, I just couldn't cut anymore. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do it. Maybe after we go through this deck tech, I'd be able to find the cards that aren't pulling their weight, because I would love for it to just be every third card be Dragon's Approach.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Like that security of that 33% out of 100 would make me feel really, really good. And right now, it's just a little less than that. Here's one thing for listeners. If you listen to this deck tech and think, wow, that sounds like so much fun. Here's a warning about this deck and about any deck that contains cards that say a deck can have any number of blank. Dragon's Approach is about $4 right now.
For a recent common.
That's right, for a common from Strixhaven. Do you remember what year Strixhaven was?
2021?
I want to say it was 21. Yeah, because that's when Marin was born. And I remember taking Marin with me to pick up a box that someone had bought for me of Strixhaven. Because I loved this set. 1, Strixhaven was an awesome set. And 2, back when Strixhaven came out, I was hunting down Dragon's Approaches.
Yeah.
I was calling up friends. I was looking for any spare copies of Dragon's Approach that I could get for cheap or free.
Yeah.
You know, I would see people opening up Strixhaven packs at the shop and be like, hey, are you guys going to use your Dragon's Approaches? Any that you found? People would say no and give them to me. But just consider that if you start from scratch for any deck like this, the shops love to shoot up the price because they know that people want to buy 30 of them at a time.
Right.
Because people want to fill their decks up with them. Nobody is going to say, I need just one Dragon's Approach. You know, it would be a 25-cent card. It would be a 50-cent card at that point.
Yeah.
But because shops know that people want to buy them in bulk, they'll rack up the price on the individual. That way they can make $120.
Yeah.
You know? So consider that, budget players, if you decide on a deck like Dragon's Approach. A new card that just came out, Slime Against Humanity, is another card like this. A deck can have any number of it.
It's already shooting up in price.
Already shooting up in price, absolutely. Now, if you were to play with us, proxy your extra copies. Or or grab basic lands and a Sharpie and write Dragon's Approach on it. You know, I mean, that's what I would do. But because I was gathering up Dragon's Approaches when the set came out, you know, I was able to get all of my legitimate copies.
Nice.
But that's what this deck is built around. It's a sorcery that is going to deal 3 damage to each opponent. And then, once I have 4 Dragon's Approaches in the graveyard, the next one I approach searches me out a dragon onto the battlefield for free.
Nice.
Really fun, really exciting. Let's get to the categories.
So we're going to break our deck down into categories like we always do. If you don't know what our general categories are, check out episode 34 of My Mythical Meta, where we provide a beginner deck building template and explain each category in detail. We do use the normal categories that you'll see a lot of deck builders using, and even though this deck plays in a lot of ways differently from your normal Commander deck, it still helps to organize the deck into categories so that you can see how everything works. So our first category that we typically talk about is ramp. And Travis, how do you ramp in this deck?
Most of the ramp is pretty normal. I've got a Soul Ring, I've got your Artifact ramp, but I have 2 really special pieces that I don't think I would run normally. The first that is so unique to this deck is called Locket of Yesterdays. This is a card that does not see play in any other Commander decks, besides the ones that have multiples of cards. Locket of Yesterdays is a 1-mana artifact, and it says, spells you play cost 1 less to play for each card with the same name as that spell in your graveyard.
Wow.
Woo! Isn't that so awesome? That means once I've cast Dragon's Approach twice, every future Dragon's Approach costs only 1 red to cast.
That's crazy.
That is insane.
I've actually never seen this card before.
1 red to Lightning Bolt all 3 of my opponents. By casting Dragon's Approach, obviously. So, that is a really great card. I certainly don't think this card is played in any other constructed formats.
I don't think so. Like I was just saying, I've never seen this card before until I saw it on your deck page. This is crazy.
But it's so cool.
Yeah.
I found this by going to Scryfall. I found a couple cards in this deck by going to Scryfall and going to Advanced Search and putting in text, card, same name. And then just finding all the cards that look for you to play multiples of a card. So Locket of Yesterdays was one of those, and it makes Dragon's Approach cost only 1 red to cast for 1. So it's almost like a make-your-own Ruby Medallion. It costs 1 less, and then, you know, it cuts the cost of all of my Dragon's Approaches. Okay, the next one is Dreamscape Artist. Dreamscape Artist is a human spell shaper. Costs 1 and a blue. So this creature type, Spell Shaper, what they do is they always have an ability that costs a mana and has you discard a card, and then its effect will copy a common card from Magic. And in this case, Dreamscape Artist is copying the card Harrow. Now, Harrow is green, but Dreamscape Artist is blue. So its effect says, pay 2 and a blue, tap, discard a card. The card that I'm discarding will be Dragon's Approach. Because remember, each Dragon's Approach is checking how many I have in my graveyard. So I'm going to discard Dragon's Approach, and then it asks me to sacrifice a land. And the effect is to search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. You don't put them on the battlefield tapped, you just set them there. You just set them off. So this is the magic card Harrow. And Harrow is ramp. You sacrifice 1, but then you play 2. So you are up 1 land.
Yep.
Dreamscape Artist is having me discard a card. I can discard Dragon's Approach, get more copies into my graveyard. This is a great way in this deck to get especially mountains. This particular deck is very heavy with red pips in the mana cost. I need to be able to generate red in this deck. So if I get an early, say for example, swamp, and I don't need the black, I can sack that swamp to get some more reds.
Nice.
I just realized, Benjamin, that I didn't talk about the commanders yet.
True, yeah.
So, the colors that I've decided to go with for this Dragon's Approach deck were red, obviously, and then blue and black for support. And I have 2 commanders that have partner.
Okay.
These partner commanders came from the 2016 commander set. I am running Ludovic, Necro Alchemist, and Vile Smasher the Fierce as my 2 partner commanders for this deck. I wanted to do a check to see if there are any replacement Grixis commanders you think I could use for this deck. Because both of these cards, especially Vile Smasher, is a bit more expensive. Abaddon. Abaddon the Despoiler would be good for this. It says, during your turn, spells you cast from your hand with mana value X or less have Cascade, where X is the total amount of life your opponents have lost this turn.
So all your Dragon's Approaches will get all your 2 mana stuff out.
Exactly.
And anything else.
But, well, I mean, anything in the deck. Nothing in the deck costs 9. Well, so I cast 1 Dragon's Approach, and my opponents have all lost 9 life.
Right, but
and then everything else in my deck will cascade.
Well, but 3 will cascade into 2, will cascade into 1. You'll never get another Dragon's Approach with a Dragon's Approach.
Not with a Dragon's Approach.
Right,
but yeah, if I can manage to cast anything with 4, so that's 1.
Yeah. Let's.
Cormella Glamour Thief, maybe 1 tap, add red, black, blue. Spend this mana only to cast instant and sorcery spells. Oh, and when she dies, return an instant of sorcery from your graveyard to your hand.
It's not bad. It gets you a Dragon's Approach back, and she lets you ramp into more Dragon's Approaches.
Kest Dissident Mage.
Yeah.
But that would have you exiling Dragon's Approaches from your graveyard. I don't know. I'm just going to go...
Jaleva?
Jaleva. Saruman the White Hand could be an interesting choice. It says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, amass Orcs X, where X is that spell's mana value.
Oh. Nekusar, of course.
Yeah, Nekusar would be pretty good. Saruman the White Hand could be good, and this can help us move into the categories. The next major category is card draw. I gotta make sure I'm getting cards in my hand to replace each Dragon's Approach I cast. And one of my commanders is gonna do that. Ludovic Necro Alchemist. He costs 1 blue, red, a human wizard, a 1/4. He says, at the beginning of each player's end step, that player may draw a card if a player other than you lost life this turn. So, Ludovic in the command zone is going to be a significant source of draw for me. He's going to help me get 1 extra card per turn as long as I can cast Dragon's Approach once.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of a make your own Phyrexian Arena. I got to jump through a hoop in order to make sure I get that extra card, but it's in the command zone, and I can get it out turn 3. So, pretty significant. This is also a great way to turn away some early aggression.
Mm-hmm.
My opponents are incentivized by Ludovic to attack each other, or to get each other to lose life, and not me, if they want that card draw at the end of their turn. And as you'll see with most of this deck is very red aggro. It wants to get your opponent's life down as fast as possible. And as soon as your opponents realize what you're doing, they're going to come after you. So having Ludovic come out early before they know it's a Dragon's Approach deck is going to do a pretty good job of having your opponents to point their early aggression elsewhere. Or Benjamin, is there anything about Ludovic that you especially like, or anything you want to add?
I do like, because of what we're going to talk about later, how you don't have a lot of removal. I do like how it does turn away some early aggression.
Yeah.
Have you seen Davros Dalit Creator? It's a 4 mana. It's 1 blue, black, red for a 3/4 alien scientist with menace.
Okay.
At the beginning of your end step, create a 3/3 black Dalek artifact creature token with menace. If an opponent lost 3 or more life this turn, then each opponent who lost 3 or more life this turn faces a villainous choice. You draw a card, or that player discards a card.
Oh my god. How is that so perfect? Because it can help me... it's going to generate card advantage.
Yeah.
No matter what they choose for the villainous choice.
Yeah, and you'll get it 3 times on each of your turns.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I might have to do it. I mean, we'll see what you think about the other partner, Vile Smasher, when we talk about it later. But you're right, that might be a switch. And that would get me an extra card in the deck.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I could cut Vile Smasher and add a Dragon's Approach.
Yeah?
He only costs 13 cents.
Nice. I would probably want to keep Ludovic, though, so it would really be just switching out Davros for Vile Smasher.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Okay, let's look at my next card draw engine and the secret commander of this deck. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I mean, I almost even forgot to describe the commanders of this deck, Ludovic and Vile Smasher. And that's because this deck is actually going to hum with Niv-Mizzet Parun. Niv-Mizzet Parun is a dragon wizard, and he is always going to be my first target after blasting off a few dragons' approaches. Here's Niv-Mizzet Parun. He costs blue, 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 red, red, red. Not 6, not 4 red, blue. Right. Niv-Mizzet is very, very particular in the type of mana he wants you to spend. He wants you to be devoted into blue and red. Now that won't matter if I search it out with Dragon's Approach. He is a 5/5. It says this spell can't be countered. He has flying. It says whenever you draw a card, Niv-Mizzet Parun deals 1 damage to any target. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. This is the type of card draw you need in a spellslinger deck. Okay, when you cast an instant or sorcery, draw a card. Alright, this is going to make this deck hum, because now every single Dragon's Approach is a cantrip that's going to replace itself.
Yeah, likely with more Dragon's Approaches.
Likely with more Dragon's Approaches, exactly. His card draw power is insane. Okay, whenever your opponents are casting instants or sorcery spells, you get to draw a card. Whenever they cast Swords to Plowshares to remove Niv-Mizzet, you get to draw a card. Okay, plus he also synergizes very well with the non-combat damage boosters that this deck runs, which we will get later. It says whenever you draw a card, he deals 1 damage to any target. You can use that to pick off your opponent's mana dorks, or just to blast your opponents in the face in order to help them count up to 40.
Yeah.
You gotta count that damage up. Alright, so this is the secret commander.
I love it. I love that it synergizes so well, because you're right, when you have a deck like this that is just trying to play as many spells as possible, it's real easy to run out of cards. The curve on this deck is so low. You have a few expensive things like Niv-Mizzet, but they're meant to be cheated out. And for the most part, you'll find yourself, I think, once you get to 6 mana, empty-handed. Niv-Mizzet lets you just keep churning and helps you see the cards you want to see. So I love that it's in there, and I love that it's your first target for Dragon's Approach.
Yes, this is always first target for Dragon's Approach. A little later, we'll talk about what to do whenever he gets removed, because he will get removed.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. And it has happened every single time I've played this deck. Niv-Mizzet comes out, he gets removed, and I've drawn maybe 2 cards, and dealt 1 damage, because I had Ludovic out and drew a card at the end. But now listen, he's a lightning rod for that exact reason, for good reason, because if he sits on the board, he's going to shell out tons of damage, and I'm going to draw tons of cards. My next card draw engine, Archmage Emeritus. This was another Strixhaven card. Another reason I was opening a ton of Strixhaven when it came out. Costs 2 blue blue for a 2/2 human wizard, and he has Magecraft, which means whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, you draw a card. Wow. He's doing the exact same thing Niv-Mizzet's doing, helping me draw a card off of every Dragon's Approach.
And if I'm not mistaken, you have several things that copy in here, right?
I only have, I think, 1. I think it's just Pyromancer's Ascension.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one I was looking at.
Now, my maybe board, the stuff that I was thinking about when I built the deck, includes a lot of spell copying.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But copying Dragon's Approach doesn't actually get me another copy in the graveyard.
Right.
And so I kind of cut some of those out.
Gotcha.
And yeah, I certainly think there's room in this deck for more of those spell copiers, but we'll get to that when we get to a later section too. I think any Spellslinger deck wants Archmage Emeritus, but he does cost $3.
Yeah.
If you're on a budget, I think Jory N. Ruin Diver is a good replacement. He costs 1 blue red, so 3 mana total, for a 2/3 Merfolk Wizard, and it says whenever you cast your second spell each turn, draw a card. So it's certainly not as good as Archmage Emeritus, but as long as you're casting 2 spells, you're going to get another card in hand.
Yeah.
Just so happens in this deck that I'm running both. I've got both Archmage Emeritus and Jory and Ruin Diver in this deck. What do you think about Archmage and Jory N?
Archmage, definitely. I love that it curves out well.
Yeah.
You play your first 3 mana. It's something to do on turn 4. And then I think Jorian is only ever going to draw you one card.
Yeah.
But I do like that it's a cheap way to make sure that you're drawing extra cards every turn.
Yeah. Okay, so these next two cards that Benjamin's about to talk about are only here because of the Dragon's Approach theme. I don't really run them in any other decks. Go for it.
Okay, so Sphinx of the Chimes is a 6-mana Sphinx. It costs 4 blue and blue for a 5/6 Sphinx with flying. And it says, discard 2 non-land cards with the same name, draw 4 cards.
4, Benjamin. Draw 4 cards.
4 cards. So it does 2 things for you. One, the only card you're going to have with the same name is Dragon's Approach. So you're putting 2 Dragon's Approaches in the graveyard and getting 4 new cards. Likely 1 or 2 of those are going to be Dragon's Approach. It's a quick way to be able to trigger Dragon's Approach's search feature and draw extra cards on top of that. I think that's awesome. I think it's entirely possible for you to be able to churn through a good chunk of your deck this way.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe trigger Dragon's Approach back to back. And with that ability, you can fetch this other card draw engine.
So the next one is Dragon Mage. I really don't put this in many decks because of his mana cost. He costs 5 red. That's 7 total. Super high curve. He is a Dragon Wizard, and he's a 5/5. I don't know. For a lot of times, that's not enough. But he is a Dragon Wizard, and I can cheat him out with Dragon's Approach. And he has this effect. When Dragon Mage deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards. He is a Wheel of Fortune every time he deals combat damage.
And since you'll be going Hellbent so easily in this deck, because it's just a bunch of low-cost sorceries mainly, he refills your hand and can get rid of stuff that maybe people were holding on to. I love it.
Yeah, just a really good Dragon's Approach backup target to help me refill my hand, just like you said. And I think burn is really difficult in Commander. It's a much tougher deal than it is in a 1v1 format because you only have to count up to 20. Yeah. But in Commander, a multiplayer format, each player has 40 life. You have to count up to 120.
Yeah.
And drawing those cards when each card is just a one-use fire-off is really, really important. I want to run you through, a magical Christmas land with Sphinx of the Chimes. Like we said, this ability is discard 2 non-land cards of the same name, draw 4 cards. Imagine this magical Christmas land. You discard 2 Dragon's Approaches, you've got them in your graveyard, you draw 4. Hopefully, in those 4 cards you just drew, you got at least 2 Dragon's Approaches. Discard 2 again. Keep going. Draw 4 more. Hopefully this time you get at least 1 Dragon's Approach. You cast Dragon's Approach, you get the search without having to cast the first 4.
Yeah.
And now I'm up 5 cards. I'm up 5 cards. I discarded 2 that I drew. I went 1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
So I'm up 5 cards. I've gotten the search all just through Sphinx of the Chimes' card draw ability.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a bit of a magical Christmas land, but wow, it's too cool to pass up.
No, I love it.
And again, a card that I can't play in any other deck.
Yeah, take advantage. It's all about the fun.
I just think it's really, really special. Okay, last, I think this card is really, really good. And it's so good because it has 2 sides, and both of those sides are good in this deck. It can do 2 different things. So this card is Birgi, God of Storytelling. This is a card from Kaldheim, one of the double-faced god cards. Its front side is Birgi, God of Storytelling. It costs 2 and a red, and it makes for a really interesting ramp spell. Birgi, God of Storytelling is a 3/3 god. It says whenever you cast a spell, add red. So you add red to your mana. And until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. So this is a really great way, if I can start chaining together the mana that I get from each spell, then I can start chaining Dragon's Approaches into one another by adding red each time I cast a spell. So that front side is really, really good. Birgi does have some other text that I don't think anyone has ever used in the history of it. It says creatures you control can boast twice during each of your turns rather than once. That's never happened. Nobody's ever used that. Okay, now the backside is why it's in this card draw category. And again, I just think it's really, really good and has such high potential. The backside is Harnfell, Horn of Bounty. It costs 4 and a red, and here's its ability. Discard a card. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. So it's giving me some of that red impulsive draw that I can cast it only this turn or else I have to lose it. So again, I discard Dragon's Approach, I exile the top 2 cards, and hopefully I start seeing Dragon's Approaches in there. Or I'm filtering cards that aren't Dragon's Approaches out of the deck so that I can draw the next one.
Yeah, and a lot of beginners may not realize that when you cast a spell from exile, it will go to your graveyard.
Yep.
So
that's not a worry with this card. Even though it's doing that exile thing, as long as I cast it once it's there, it's safe in my graveyard after I cast it.
Yeah.
Now, this card costs $17. Like I said, because it's really good, it does see a lot of play in those constructed formats because of mono red burn.
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, I play it in my Ragavan deck, right? Yeah. Because, it has a lot of things that make treasures when you play spells, and then this, it's possible to really chain together a bunch of stuff, or it doesn't need a lot of mana, so the backside can be used to filter lands into gas, and so it's really good in that deck as well. So, I mean, it's just good in so many things. It's good in Storm decks that just want to chain spells together, and that's kind of what it's doing here. So.
Yeah, I mean, Bergi or Harnfell, either side, plus Archmage Emeritus, or plus Niv-Mizzet Parun, and you have got yourself a stew going.
Yeah.
Cast a card, cast Dragon's Approach, get mana and draw a card. You're just gonna chain and storm and deal 12, 15 damage off of nothing but Dragon's Approaches.
Yep, and then grab a dragon on top of that.
Yeah, and then search up another dragon. But it is $17, so.
Well, there is something that you might be able to replace at least the Bergi side with, that it's only $6, and that would be Neheb the Eternal, which is...
I know, he's in my maybe board.
Yeah.
I've always thought about putting him in this deck.
Okay, so he's a 5-mana zombie Minotaur warrior. It's 3 red. He has Afflict 3, meaning if he gets blocked, the defending player still loses 3 life. And he says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, add red to your mana pool for each 1 life your opponents have lost this turn. So if you have him out and you cast 1 Dragon's Approach during your pre-combat main phase, then during your post-combat main phase, each of your opponents has lost 3 life, you will add 9 mana to your mana pool.
That's enough to cast 3 more Dragon's Approaches. I know, he's so good.
So I think at $6, he'd be a good substitute, at least for the Bergi side, because Bergi would require you to play 3 Dragon's Approaches to be able to play 1 more, whereas this one can play 3 Dragon's Approaches off of just 1. So it doesn't have the card draw side of Harnfell, which is I know important, and certainly it's not a 1-for-1 replacement. But if you find yourself adding more card draw, or you find that you're just not fast enough, but you don't run out of cards, Neheb might be a good choice for that. It's also a great blocker because it's a 4/6.
Oh yeah, he's got a huge butt.
Yeah, and
he's ready to block.
Yep. So
yeah, so that's my card draw category. I do have a few other things, but nothing that really stands out in Grixis Spellslinger, but these are the cards that kind of synergize with Dragon's Approach, and that's what I want to do, is just churn through this deck as fast as possible and get those 31 copies of Dragon's Approach into my hand.
Yeah, and looking through your deck on Architect, I do see that you are playing 8 plus your commander, so 9 card draw spells. I think that's okay. Normally I would want more, but I think the fact that you can tutor out both Niv-Mizzet and Dragon Mage with all of your Dragon's Approaches, I think means, and you have 1 in the command zone, means you're going to be reliably getting your card draw. So I think that's okay.
That was exactly my mindset. Ludovic is in the command zone, so he's safe. He's a reliable get, and same with Niv-Mizzet and Dragon Mage. If my deck is doing the rest of what it's doing with Dragon's Approaches, then I can get those card draw engines out reliably. So, it's this deck's a toss-up. If it works, it works, and if it doesn't, then I don't know if I was going to win anyway.
Right.
Deck construction is certainly weird in this deck in particular, and I think that's a great way to look into our next category. So we've done ramp, we've done card draw, now we're always preaching removal.
Right.
Protecting your game plan and removing your opponents. Guys, I have not practiced what I preach in this deck in terms of removal. This deck says I don't need to remove my opponent's individual pieces. I just need to remove the other players as fast as possible. It's kind of a joke in Magic to say when you're playing burn, you're just counting to 20 in 1v1. In this deck, in Commander, I'm trying to count to 40 as fast as possible. I don't need to remove my opponent's stuff if I can count to 40 faster than they can. So I do think a good deck builder would probably include some counter spells and some copy spells, to copy someone else's removal and then turn it back on them, or some counter spells to undo it entirely. And this deck maybe could even do with some damage-based board wipes because of the other boosts that I have later.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do have are these two cards that I think synergize with Dragon's Approach really, really well and can help me eliminate my opponent's creatures if they're getting too troublesome.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is called Satyr Fire Dancer. It costs 1 and a red for a 1/1 Satyr. And it says, whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control deals damage to an opponent, Satyr Fire Dancer deals that much damage to target creature that player controls. I think this card's really cool. It turns the 3 damage that I dealt to my opponent's face with Dragon's Approach. It redirects that and deals 3 additional damage to one of the creatures they have. Like I said earlier, mana dorks, any other creature that's just providing some utility on the battlefield, I can use Satyr Fire Dancer to point some damage directly at them.
Yeah.
I do know that you have this next card in your Avacyn Burn deck. Go ahead.
Yes. All right. So this next one I love a lot because it does so many things. It's Chandra's Incinerator. It looks like it costs 6, 5 and a red for a 6/6 elemental, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. So if you cast 1 Dragon's Approach, you've dealt 3 damage to each of your opponents, so 9 total non-combat damage, so it's only going to cost red.
1 red mana for a 6/6 trampling elemental.
Yes, and whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, which is most of your deck, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So you can play your Dragon's Approach. It basically does something very similar to Satyr Fire Dancer, where you're going to play it, you're going to deal 3 damage to an opponent and to one of their creatures or planeswalkers, and you do that for each of your opponents. If you've got both of these out, or if you're able to play more than 1 Dragon's Approach at a time, then you're able to take out most of the biggest creatures. Usually, creatures don't get much bigger than 6/6, right? 6 toughness. You're really pushing it to get to 7 toughness. And so these 2 creatures are able to take out most things if you can double up on Dragon's Approach.
And, Benjamin, here's something that I remember from your Avacyn Burn deck. If I can get just a single one of my non-combat damage boosters later, or that we're going to discuss later, then the damage that Satyr Fire Dancer or the damage that Chandra's Incinerator will deal to the creatures is multiplied again.
Absolutely. Yeah, if
or
you
it's
have something...
it's added again, or it's multiplied again. If I can get a single one of those cards, then the damage output from Fire Dancer or Incinerator is multiplied. Potentially times 9 damage.
Absolutely. So let's just do something basic, like let's say you have something that adds 1 damage when you do damage. Well, it'll add 1 damage to the opponent, meaning it's dealing 4 to them, which means Incinerator says it deals 4 to the creature, but that 4 is going to be added. Now you're doing 5 to that creature, and so just 1 little damage increaser, suddenly you can take out 5 toughness creatures. Well, that's most of what gets played. That's most commanders. That's basically all utility creatures. Yeah. It becomes crazy, and then of course, like you said, if you've got something that doubles your damage,
your damage,
So it does 6 damage to the opponent, and then 12 to one of their creatures.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
We'll get to my damage boosting section in a minute, but again, guys, this deck probably could use a lot more targeted removal, but every card I add in is 1 less Dragon's Approach.
Yeah.
So I had a really hard time adding in more. And I just wanted to go fast. Just rack up the damage to my opponents as fast as possible. If I can take Derek's life from 40 to 0, then I don't have to worry about removing his commander or removing his other creatures or his enchantments or whatever. I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Because as soon as he dies, all of his stuff is out. Okay.
Okay, what is your recursion or plan B? What do you do if your secret commander, your Niv-Mizzet Parun, is destroyed?
So, like I said, Niv-Mizzet is the secret commander, and he is a lightning rod to removal. So my first recursion is another dragon. It's called Bladewing the Risen. He is a zombie dragon, 4/4. His mana cost is ridiculous. 3 black, red, red. He costs 7. I'm going to search him off of Dragon's Approach. If I draw him, then I'll probably never cast him, and it's just a lose anyway. But here's Bladewing's ability. He's a 4/4 flying zombie dragon. When Bladewing the Risen enters the battlefield, you may return target dragon permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I'm going to get Niv-Mizzet back.
There you go.
If Niv-Mizzet is removed, then I'm going to keep going with Dragon's Approach until I can search out another dragon. I'll grab Bladewing and get Niv-Mizzet back. Once Niv-Mizzet Parun is removed forever, like I said, a Swords to Plowshares or an Exile or whatever else, then I'm actually going to switch to Vial Smasher. Vial Smasher has been sitting in the command zone this entire time, waiting to be Plan B. Here's Vial Smasher's stuff. Vial Smasher is a Goblin Berserker, a 2/3 for 1 black and red. It says whenever you cast your first spell each turn, Vial Smasher the Fierce deals damage equal to that spell's converted mana cost to an opponent chosen at random. So, once Vial Smasher the Fierce is on the board, and this ability always kind of sucks because you can't trigger it the turn Vial Smasher comes out.
Right.
Because if you cast Vial Smasher the first spell, well then she's your first spell.
Yeah.
So you always have to wait a turn. But I can cast a Dragon's Approach. The Dragon's Approach is going to deal 3, but then Vial Smasher is going to deal an additional 3 to one of my opponents at random. So I'm just doing, that group slug. I need to get my opponent's life totals down, and it doesn't matter who's taking the extra 3.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my major plan B for when Niv-Mizzet gets taken out. Now, that's not going to help on the card draw side, but it will help on that extra damage side. And here's my other plan B. I've got one last dragon in my deck, and that's Utvara Hellkite. Utvara Hellkite is amazing. It's 6 red, red. Like I said, I'm never going to cast it for 8. That's inaccurate. I'm going to search it out with Dragon's Approach. It's a 6/6 with flying, and it says whenever a dragon you control attacks, create a 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying. You just gum up the board with 6/6 dragon tokens. That's
right?
it.
Yep.
That's all. You just gum up the board with 6/6 dragon tokens, and you hope that Dragon's Approach is still doing its job to lower the life totals.
Yeah.
But that's all, man. That's all I've got. What you see is what you get. 30 cards are Dragon's Approach. That is plans A through D, is casting Dragon's Approach as many times as I can.
Yeah. There's very few cards that just stop a 3-mana sorcery. Obviously, there's always the Declaration of Not or Nevermore or those types of cards.
Benjamin, shh! Don't let anybody know about those cards.
But except for those cards,
yeah.
I mean,
and it's kind of funny. Nobody's gonna burn a counterspell on a Dragon's Approach,
right? Because it's such a lame card to counterspell.
Somebody might decide to counter the 5th Dragon's Approach, or every 5th Dragon's Approach, but the average Dragon's Approach cast is totally safe, which means my opponent's life totals are going down.
Yeah,
and that's how.
Well, even if they counter the 5th one, the 6th one still triggers everything.
Yeah, the 6th one still triggers that, absolutely. So yeah, plans A through Z are all the same, and it's Dragon's Approach.
Right.
And, I only have, I think I've mentioned all of the dragons in this deck. Utvara Hellkite, Bladewing the Risen, Dragon Mage, Niv-Mizzet Parun. Oh, so only 4.
Yep.
There's only 4 dragons in this deck. Now, in order to get all 4 dragons, I still have to cast Dragon's Approach 20 times.
Right, yeah.
Or do some of my other ways of cheating copies into the graveyard.
No, very, very unlikely that you're going to go through all 20. Because honestly, if you're doing it by casting, I was doing the math earlier, you only need 13 or 14 to deal 40 to everybody.
Oh,
and
there you go.
Maybe even less with the things in these next couple of categories.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
These next categories are so beautiful. Like I said, these are cards I couldn't cut because they're just so magical Christmas land. And I need enough of them so that I can make sure to draw at least one. I mean, that's kind of the thing, is I have to have enough of them in the deck in order to make sure that I draw at least one of them and I'm able to cast it. Benjamin, I want you to hit the 2 cards in my bonus casting category.
Okay, so the first card in your bonus casting category is Pyromancer Ascension. And it is an enchantment Costs 1 and a red. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that has the same name as a card in your graveyard, you may put a quest counter on Pyromancer Ascension. Now, let's start by saying this never gets played in Commander. As far as I'm aware, there are only two.
Never.
No, never. There's only 2 instants or sorceries in all of Magic that would even trigger Pyromancer's Ascension. Right, this one and Slime Against Humanity.
Dragon's Approach and Slime Against Humanity. So somebody might be out there running Gruul Slime Against Humanity.
But it's just so uncommon for this to happen. And then...
Sorry, I was kind of mad that they put this card in the Chandra's signature spellbook.
Me too.
Because they know how many people are playing Commander, and then they put a card in this product, in this like exclusive pretty card art product that is never going to see play.
Yeah.
But I found this deck for it, so I was really happy.
And there is a modern deck, Storm,
that
uses Pyromancer Ascension, or at least it used to. It's a good card in formats where it actually can trigger regularly because you can put a bunch of the same cards in your graveyard. But for Commander, this is one of the 2 decks that can run it.
Yeah.
Right? And so, okay.
So now read what it does once you've got some quest counters.
All right. So whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell while Pyromancer's Ascension has 2 or more quest counters on it. So it doesn't take much. You only need 2. You only need to have cast Dragon Mage's Approach 3 times. Because your first time you don't get any, then the next 2 you'll get a counter. Whenever you cast it while it has 2 or more quest counters on it, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Now, Pyromancer's Ascension does not target, but you're getting 2 of them a turn. And
do you mean Dragon's Approach doesn't target?
Yes, that's what I meant. Dragon's Approach doesn't target.
Yeah.
You can get 2 a turn, so each one is dealing 6 damage to your opponents.
Oh, yeah.
And never mind. I don't think you can just exile 4. I guess you would have to exile 8 to get that second part twice.
You may exile Dragon's Approach and 4
right.
cards. So, I know that copies... Can a copy exile itself?
Yes.
Okay.
The copy can exile itself, but if it was an additional cost, you would only have to pay it once. But this is not. It's an effect. So, the effect would need to be done twice.
Okay. But still,
doubling up on the damage.
So, doubling up on the damage is great. If I have 8 Dragon's Approaches in the graveyard, let's rock and roll.
There you go.
I'll get 2 dragons. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Next one.
The next one is Thrumming Stone. This is such a weird card. And it's a 5 mana legendary artifact. It says spells you cast have Ripple 4. Ripple is a really old mechanic. There are a couple cards with Ripple. Most of them are terrible. Thrumming Stone is the only interesting one. And Ripple basically says whenever you cast a spell, you look at the number of cards equal to the Ripple value. So in this case, 4. And you can cast any spells with the same name as that spell from among those cards without paying their mana cost. And it keeps going, by the way. So if you play Dragon's Approach, you look at the top 4 cards. Likely one of them is going to be a Dragon's Approach because more than a fourth of your deck is Dragon's Approach. Well, you cast anything there named Dragon's Approach, but here's the thing. You then get to Ripple again. So each of those will reveal the top 4. You may just take out the whole board the first Dragon's Approach you play after Thrumming Stone.
Because you just ripple into the other 13.
Exactly.
Oh, I mean, you can't cut it. You simply can't cut Thrumming Stone from a deck like this.
No.
The first time I ever saw Thrumming Stone was...
basically a 1-card combo.
Relentless Rats. Was somebody's Relentless Rats deck. And that's just... It was awesome.
Yeah. It is possible to whiff, but it's so hard to whiff that, totally worth it. I would definitely play this in any deck that has that you can play any number of cards of a certain type. It's honestly any deck that you're playing 4 of, like a big chunk of 4 ofs. I might even consider it if you're like any type of Storm deck, but it's not going to have nearly the impact as a deck like this where you're playing 31 copies of the same card. It's beautiful. Yeah,
it's so exciting. And again, just cards that you can't normally play in any other Commander deck. So it's so nice to find a home for them. I pulled my Thrumming Stone in Double Masters.
Oh, wow.
Again, nice. a product that they're shoving cards in that don't get played in Commander. But I pulled it, and I found a place for it. Very exciting.
Cool.
All right, y'all. The last category is called Insane Damage. This category takes each Dragon's Approach is 3 damage and adds multiplies your opponent's life totals. You're just going to watch them fall. You're just going to watch them drop once one of these makes it onto the battlefield. Should I start small and get big? All right, let's start small. We're going to start small with Gutter Snipe. Gutter Snipe is a 2/2 Goblin Shaman, and he costs 2 and a red. I can get him out nice and early in the game. It says, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is great in any Spellslinger deck, but now, each time I cast Dragon's Approach, my opponents are taking the original 3, plus a bonus 2. Now, instead of 13 Dragon's Approaches, or whatever, I only need to cast 8.
Yeah.
Just knocking them down.
That's
just
good math.
adding 2 damage to each thing. Next one, costs 4, Torbrand, Thane of Red Fell.
Oof, one of my favorite.
1, red, red, red. Again, lots of red pips in this deck. I don't usually go over the mana bases in these deck techs, but this one has way more mountains than anything else. I think it has 3 times as many mountains as it does swamps or islands, because you've got to hit those red pips.
And what does Torbrand do?
If a red source you control would deal damage to an opponent, or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Ooh. Not only does this turn every Dragon's Approach into 5 damage instead of 3, this is going to turn every Niv-Mizzet Parun damage into 3 instead of 1.
Wow. Every Gutter Snipe into 4
That's right.
damage.
Every Gutter Snipe into 4. Every Utvara Hellkite dragon that I make will be hitting for 8 instead of 6.
Yep. Vile Smasher.
Vile Smasher is going to deal an additional 2. Satyr Fire Dancer, Chandra's Incinerator.
Will deal an additional 4?
Yes, will deal an additional 4. So this is what we were talking about with Satyr Fire Dancer and Chandra's Incinerator. Any one of these damage bonusers is going to get multiplied once it goes through Satyr Fire Dancer or Chandra's Incinerator. Yeah,
yep.
Way, way cool. And he's a 2/4 himself, which means he actually hits for 4. All right, let's jump up to my 5 costs now.
Yeah.
Fire Servant costs 3 red, red. It's a 4/3 elemental. It says if a red instant or sorcery spell you control would deal damage, it deals double that damage instead. So that's one of our doublers here. We are using the multiplication sign now, and not addition.
This one will only work with Dragon's Approaches, not with all the creatures and stuff that deal damage, because it only counts instants and sorceries. But dealing 6 per Dragon's Approach, pretty nice.
I mean, it's just a ton.
Yeah.
We should discuss what happens when you combine a multiplier, such as Fire Servant, with an adder like Torbrand. Everybody, when they're building the deck, wants to say, oh, this is perfect. Torbrand adds 2, the multiplier multiplies it, it becomes 4. That is actually not the case.
Yeah.
And don't ask me to cite the rule or whatever. I only know it because I've looked it up for this deck. Your opponent gets to choose what order they apply in.
Yeah.
And so, any normal opponent would always do the multiplication first, and then add 2.
Yeah. It depends where you're going, but it's the affected player or the owner of the affected permanent.
Yeah.
Or controller of the affected permanent. So in this case,
right,
because your opponent is the one being affected, they get to choose how the replacement effects occur, and they get to choose double then add. And I remember the first time I ran into this with my Avacyn burn deck, I was incredibly disappointed.
And I think it was me who was like, Benjamin, I promise you, this is how it works.
Yeah, you were right.
So now that doesn't stop it from still being amazing.
Oh, no,
Dragon's Approach is now going to deal 8.
Right.
Like that's no reason to not include both types of damage boosters.
Right. You just don't.
But it is pretty amazing.
Yes.
All right.
This next one, I think it's a really cool inclusion here, and I wonder.
I mean, do you want to read it?
No.
Okay.
I want you to read it, but I'm just telling our audience that it's cool.
All right. Our next
Go
one.
ahead.
And when this card came out, I always wanted a place for it, and that is a secret reason that this deck has black at all. I certainly think Dragon's Approach can be made mono red or red and blue, but I wanted a black color identity for this card. Obosh the Prey Piercer. He costs 5 total, 3, and then Rakdos. So you can fill in those other 2 with either red or black. You can go one of each. You can go all red, all black, whatever you want. So 3 Rakdos. He is a 3/5 Hellion Horror. And I'm going to read why he's in this deck first, and then we can briefly talk about what I think you wanted to talk about.
Okay.
It says, if a source you control with an odd converted mana cost would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. There's a lot in this deck with odd converted mana costs. Dragon's Approach being number one among them.
Absolutely.
It costs 3, and so now it deals 6. But that's not the only thing with an odd converted mana cost. Obosh himself has an odd converted mana cost.
Yep.
Gutter Snipe costs 3. And so now, each time you cast an instant or sorcery, Gutter Snipe deals 4 to each opponent.
Whew.
That's insane.
Yep.
Okay, I mean, let's count that up. Obosh plus Gutter Snipe plus casting Dragon's Approach a single time. I cast Dragon's Approach. It deals 6. Gutter Snipe triggers from casting an instant or sorcery and deals 4. That turns 1 Dragon's Approach into 10 damage.
Yep. Vial Smasher costs 3.
Exactly. So Vial Smasher costs 3, so now that bonus damage is being doubled also.
Yep.
Dragon Mage. Looks like those are the big hitters.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything else in the deck that I didn't... Yeah.
I mean, if you put Neheb in there, but it will not trigger Afflict, because that's lose life rather than cause damage, but it's still a beater. And Blade Wing costs 7.
Blade Wing costs 7. Not that his 4/4 flying body has any purpose. I mean, it's a nice body to gum up the battlefield once he's done his recursion ability. But heck, with Obosh, he's dealing 8.
Yeah.
That's nothing to scoff at. So
no.
Obosh was really, really cool. I wanted to get him in this deck.
Yeah.
Now, Obosh is one of the companion creatures from Ikoria. Companion is an ability that says if your deck follows a deck building restriction, then you can have this card exist in the companion zone. And that means that you can pay 3 at any time to get the companion into your hand, and then so it's almost like being in its own command zone. You can pay 3 to get into your hand at any time, which means you don't have to wait to draw it from the deck. Now, Obosh's companion restriction is this. Your starting deck contains only cards with odd converted mana costs and lands. There were too many good even cost spells I wanted to include in here. Niv-Mizzet Parun costing 6.
Yeah.
But if someone were to make maybe a Rakdos version of this deck, what were those other commanders we were just looking at? Abaddon the Despoiler costs 5.
Yep.
Roll with it. Rock and roll.
Judith Carnage Connoisseur costs 5.
Yes. Ooh, that's right. That's another new one. Making a Dragon's Approach deck with Obosh's Companion is certainly possible.
Oh, Abaddon.
I thought I said that. Anyway.
Abaddon costs 5.
Abaddon costs 5, so that'd be a great choice. But there were too many even costing things in here. Pyromancer Ascension costs 2.
Yeah.
So, I couldn't meet the deck building restriction, but he's still in the deck to be cool. Alright. Last one. Insane damage. You know it. You love it. I'm going to give it to you.
And it's another even cost. Fiery Emancipation costs 3 red for an enchantment. It says if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead, meaning your Dragon's Approaches are doing 9 damage all by themselves.
To each player.
So chances are it would only take you 4 to get them down to where you need them to be, because that'll deal 36, and then hopefully some 4 chip damage from wherever you want it to come from.
From Vial Smasher,
take them the rest of the way.
Anything else.
Yep.
It just simply doesn't matter.
No. Fire Emancipation is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that triple damage is absolutely nuts.
Yeah. And 6 mana is this deck's sweet spot, because it's where you get to where you can play multiple Dragon's Approaches in a turn. So if you get to 6 mana, you play Fire Emancipation and then start going off. You could potentially do 18 next turn.
Yeah, it's just wild.
Yeah.
And Fiery Emancipation, Benjamin used it in his Avacyn Burn deck against us with his Chandra's Incinerator.
No, it was
Brash
Taunter.
It was your Brash Taunter. It was your Brash Taunter, that's right.
And I fought my own creature, so that my own creature did triple damage to my Brash Taunter, which then did triple damage again to an opponent. So it can turn, if I had it fight a 6/6, which then did an 18, which then did 54 to someone. boom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's how I died in one hit.
Yes.
So tripling damage and then dealing damage through a multiple source, like a Chandra's Incinerator, is just absolutely nuts. I cast a Dragon's Approach, I deal 9 to an opponent, and then I deal 27 to a creature they control.
Hopefully that'll kill it. And if it doesn't, you were probably dead anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Or it was indestructible and I didn't have a chance anyways.
Yeah.
Or protection from red or something. Or hexproof. Again, guys, lots of things this deck cannot do. I just want to do damage to my opponents.
Yeah.
Oh, Benjamin, what do you think?
I love it. Playing against this deck is a lot of fun because it is a race, and it's hard to interact with, but it doesn't feel... It's not like a combo deck where it's just... They sit back and you're racing an invisible clock. This is one of those decks where you're racing a clock that you can clearly see.
Oh, yeah.
Right? He's digging through his deck. He's helping you draw cards with Ludovic and encouraging you to attack your opponents. He's pinging different things. So Niv-Mizzet and Chandra's Incinerator are interactive, but not so interactive that he really stops you from doing your game plan. So it's a fun deck to play against, but also very scary. Because you never know when he's going to go, all right, and I'm going to drop Thrumming Stone and hit the table for 18 or 24, however many you go through, and every revealed card, right? It's watching the Pyromancer's Ascension tick up. It's watching the dragons build up from Udvara Hellkite.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deck that can win on several different axes. It's really hard to run out of gas. You can always try, though. It's soft to discard, especially early discard.
Yeah.
It's a little soft to, I think we mentioned the ones that prevent you from playing.
Mm-hmm.
But our meta doesn't play a whole lot of those things. I think you and I are probably the only ones who play heavy discard. And so you're obviously not playing against yourself. I think it's pretty solid. I was so impressed the first time you pulled it out, and I was just like, wow, this is it's a fun race. Some races aren't fun, but this one is. I like it.
Let me be honest with the listeners here. Let me talk about how this deck usually runs and how the games usually end.
Yeah.
The early game is usually Ludovic getting more cards into my hand each turn until my opponents start getting annoyed with Dragon's Approach. I'll cast 1, 2, 3, 4. Then they get the idea as soon as 4 are in the graveyard. And as soon as 4 are in the graveyard, all targets go onto me. I usually cast the next one, get Niv-Mizzet. He has a lightning rod and gets removed as fast as possible. So Niv-Mizzet was free, and I usually spent turn 5 or 6 playing some type of engine. Maybe it's card draw, maybe it's a bonus damager or something. And then I spend turn 7 playing as many Dragon's Approaches from my hand as possible. And sometimes that's like 4 or 5 or 6. Because I've got a draw or a Locket of Yesterday that's turning them all into 1 red or whatever. Usually after that, though, my hand's empty and I die the next turn. That has happened more times than this deck has won. But, man, that last turn where you storm off and deal, 18 to 24-ish damage to all the other opponents, it means you're not sitting out for very long afterwards.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, this deck is a ton of fun. I love, like we've been saying, that race to the finish. To see your opponents, to see the fear settle in over them, because at the beginning they were having fun with Ludovic.
Right.
At the beginning they were having fun, and then once Niv-Mizzet comes out, they realize what you're doing. And then everybody targets you because they don't want to be burned.
Yeah.
But it is pretty fun. It does make me feel pretty powerful to cast Dragon's Approach 6 times in a turn.
And it's scary when that happens because we're sitting there going, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
How did we let this engine get online?
Yeah.
I do think it's possible that we're able to outrace you because of Ludovic. Because it usually is 3 people drawing an extra card versus you drawing an extra card.
Dude, that Davros commander that you showed me, Davros, Dalek, whatever.
Yeah.
That is a serious consideration for this deck. I mean, it's only 17 cents. I might buy it literally when we finish this episode.
Yeah, and the nice thing about that one, if you do choose to go that way, is in addition to drawing you cards or making your opponents discard, it also gives you blockers.
Yeah, it creates those 3/3 Daleks. All right. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
One of the things I really respect about Travis, and one of the reasons I think that my listeners, your listeners, should continue to watch these deck techs, is that he is a prolific deck builder. And the only reason his decks aren't all 8s is because he doesn't have infinite money.
This is true.
Because he sees the code and he gets inspired so quickly and sees different ways to build cool decks like this, right? If you're listening to this one, you probably recently listened to John Arenicus. Well, yes, I do think I refined that deck, but he's the one who built it. He built the shell and introduced me to the idea, right? And so he really sees ways that decks can work well together. And this is one of those that I highly encourage you to check out, to try to play Magic in a different way and see the fun you could bring to the table when they're all trying to race the approach of the dragon, right? When the shadow passes over them the first time, and they're like, is the dragon approaching?
I know. I really like the flavor of the deck.
Yeah.
You know, you play Dragon's Approach for the first time and everybody starts wondering, or the spell itself, not necessarily the deck.
Yeah.
But people start wondering, like, which dragon?
Yeah.
If somebody's never seen the deck before, they start saying, oh my god, what dragon is it?
Yeah, and what's really cool, other than Niv-Mizzet, which I think the deck really wants, other than that, you could really go whichever way you wanted. You don't have to have Dragon's Mage. You could easily, a dragon I was thinking would be really cool was Tyrant's Familiar. It has haste, so you'd be able to play it as soon as you played your attack with it. Knock something out.
Deal 7 non-combat damage.
Yep. To a creature. Yeah.
Yeah, he's really good. Another one of my maybe dragons was Hellkite Tyrant.
Ooh,
6/5 trample that steals artifacts.
Yep. Some of those dragons from Dragons of Tarkir, the one that whenever any of your dragons attack, your creatures your opponents control get -1/-1.
Yeah, that's Silumgar the Drifting Death. He's in this color identity too.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yep.
Ooh, Benjamin.
So those could replace things like Udvara Hellkite or Dragon Mage, and the deck would play almost exactly the same. You could turn it into have your 5 toolbox dragons, and everything else is still ways to draw cards and do whatever. I'm sure there are dragons that come in and destroy permanents. So this deck is very flexible. I think that anytime you're playing something that plays like Dragon's Approach, I think you have to play the Pyromancer's Ascension and Thrumming Stone and Sphinx of the Chimes, and just take advantage of the fact that you get to play these cards that no one else plays with, and have fun with them that way.
Well, listeners, that's the end. That is my Ludovic and Vial Smasher Dragon's Approach. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to tune in to My Mythical Meta and Eldorado Gaming for more deck techs and the My Mythical Meta podcast. You can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/mymythicalmeta.
And tune in next time for a good deck.
Aww.
This episode was sponsored by Eldorado Gaming. Use the promo code META for 10% off your order. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. This episode was edited by me, Travis Konishek, and our intro and outro music is by Tyler Heath of the Oh Hellos.